Hello everyone, I'm Jacob Kaufman, I'm the Nerd on the Street, and today we are installing Nextcloud 17 on a Debian server. Okay everybody, so a little while ago I made a video about installing Nextcloud on Ubuntu, and a lot of people really liked that video. Now I was recently browsing the Nextcloud website, and I saw in the news that Nextcloud 17 was released a couple of months ago, and it included a really cool new feature. There's now a built-in collaborative text editor. Now OwnCloud originally included a built-in collaborative text editor, and when the Nextcloud fork happened, it was removed after a couple of versions. And I talked about in my videos way back then that I didn't think that was a very good move. It kind of set Nextcloud back when you're comparing it against Google Drive, which obviously has Google Docs. And over the past year or so, we've seen both Collabora Online and OnlyOffice kind of step in and start becoming viable options for people who are wanting to run a collaborative Office suite on their Nextcloud servers. However, it's still an extra app that you have to install. It's more resources that your server is spending running that app, and it's more complex setup. So I'm really excited to take a look at Nextcloud 17 and see what this new text editor looks like, see how it compares to the one that was removed a few years ago. Today I'm making this video using a Debian droplet on DigitalOcean because, well, I like to use a variety of different Linux distributions. When I made my last video, Debian was shipping a very old version of PHP, which made it a little more difficult to install Nextcloud on it, but Debian 10, which is the current version, includes a modern version of PHP that can run Nextcloud out of the box. And so there's really no reason to go with Ubuntu if you're not planning on using any Ubuntu specific features like snap packages or PPAs. Debian's just a little bit lighter weight because it doesn't have Canonical's advertising stuff in it and that kind of thing. So yeah, without further ado, let's cut to the desktop and install Nextcloud. Alright guys, so here we are on the desktop, and I do have a web browser here. Like I mentioned, I will be using DigitalOcean in this video. You can also use Linode, or you can use your own server if you've got one. If you're just wanting to try out Nextcloud or any other server-side application, you can go to digitalocean.knots.co to get some credit on there, play around with it for free. You can also go to linode.knots.co if you'd like to play around with Linode, but we will go ahead and create a droplet here. Like I said, we will be using Debian. We'll go ahead and drop this down and select Debian 10 because we do want that newer version of PHP that's included so that we don't have to add it manually. For Nextcloud, I'm going to select a $10 a month droplet here. This gives us 2 gigs of RAM. Nextcloud is fairly good about not using a ton of resources, but it can be a little bit slow on just 1 gigabyte of RAM. So we'll spin this server up in New York. I'll go ahead and add my SSH key since I've got it on my account, and we will call this server Nextcloud server. We'll start creating that droplet, and we will also need to find the download link for Nextcloud over on the Nextcloud website, which is nextcloud.com. If we click the big Get Nextcloud button on the front page, we will be downloading it for our server in a few moments. We're not actually going to download it onto my computer right now, but I just wanted to find the link. We can right-click and copy link address here. The default link is a zip file. There is also a tar.bz2 file, which is probably going to be a little bit smaller. Checking back on our DigitalOcean site, it looks like our droplet is created, and now that we've got this IP address, actually, I know I just copied something else, but we're going to copy this IP address. And I am going to go ahead and set up a DNS record. This is not required to run Nextcloud, but it is required to set up HTTPS, which we will be doing in this video. So this is going to be example.nerdonthestreet.com that we're working with. I will paste in my droplet's IP address. I'm going to set the time to live to 5 minutes because I will be deleting this record later, and we'll click save. So that's going to take a few minutes to propagate, but by the time that we are setting up HTTPS or SSL TLS, it should be ready. So with that, we will copy our IP address again. I probably didn't need to do that since I already had it copied, but we will open up a terminal here and SSH into the root account in this droplet. All right, and just like that, we are in a Debian server. You can see our host name that I specified has been set. The first thing we'll do, like I do with any fresh server, we'll be running an apt update and an apt full upgrade, just to make sure we are all up to date to start with here. All right, now that we are all up to date, we need to install the prerequisites for Nextcloud. This is going to include our web server, Apache, as well as the PHP application and MariaDB, which we will be using for our MySQL database. I've got an apt command here that is going to install all the packages for us at the same time, and this will be in the description down below, or rather there will be a link to the Nerd on the Street wiki where I will have this command. So we'll just wait for that to be installed. All right, and that is all done. So now if I take my Droplets IP address and I try to navigate to that IP address, we do have our Apache default page. This shows us that our web server is working. Now I also want to check if my DNS record has gone through yet. So we will navigate to example.nerdonthestreet.com, and this is not my website, so it looks like that DNS record has still not gone through. Let's see here, our IP address starts with 159. If I just use an online DNS tool to check example.nerdonthestreet.com, we're looking for an A record, and yep, looks like this is still pointing to some old IP address, which is now somebody else's droplet because I since deleted that droplet. So at this point, I would like to set up HTTPS before we do the Nextcloud installation. That'll make things easier for us. So we just need to wait for this DNS record to update. All right, and that IP address has updated. So if we go ahead and navigate one more time to example.nerdonthestreet.com, you'll see this time, instead of some other random person's page, we get my own Apache test page. So now we're going to come back over to our Debian server. We are going to install certbot. Only 2 packages needed for that. And after that's done being installed, we'll just run certbot -Apache to install it and automatically configure our Apache web server. And actually, I forgot to do one step. You'll see it in a moment here. No names were found in your configuration files. Now, I could go ahead and just enter example.nerdonthestreet.com in right here in my certbot script, but instead I'm going to press Control-C to exit out of that, and I'm going to do a little bit more setup. So right now, this default page is coming from our default Apache virtual host, which is at var www.html. And if we do an ls there, you can see this page actually right here on our file system. Now I'm going to go up one directory and I'm going to make a new folder called Nextcloud. So now that we have that Nextcloud folder, I am going to copy our etc apache 2 sites available 000 default configuration file into the same directory, etc apache 2 sites available, but I'm going to call it nextcloud.conf. And then we're going to edit that configuration file, etc apache 2 sites available nextcloud.conf. And we are going to uncomment the server name directive. We are going to set that to example.nerdonthestreet.com. Just for good form, I'll go ahead and set our server admin email address to my own email address. And then we are going to set our document root to var www.nextcloud. We're going to save this. We are going to run a2 in site to enable that site, Nextcloud. And now we're going to reload Apache in order to make that configuration go into effect. So now if we refresh example.nerdonthestreet.com, we don't get our test page anymore. We just get an index which has nothing because our test page was in var www.html. And now when we use example.nerdonthestreet.com to connect to the server, Apache is going to send it to the Nextcloud directory instead, which actually means we can cd into our Nextcloud directory. This is where we're going to put Nextcloud in just a moment. First, though, I am going to go back and run my certbot command one more time. This time you can see it detects that I've got example.nerdonthestreet.com configured. We are going to configure HTTPS for that site. And we are going to configure a redirect so that we are always connecting via HTTPS, never via regular HTTP. So now if I come back over and refresh one more time, you can see we are redirected to HTTPS, example.nerdonthestreet.com. And we're getting an interesting error here. And the website is reloaded, and now we do not get that error anymore. I think that was just Let's Encrypt taking a minute to submit that certificate upstream to some certificate transparency authorities to prove that it's legitimate to my web browser. But you can see we are now connected with HTTPS, which means everything between this computer and the web server will be encrypted with TLS, which is exactly what we wanted. Now we are going to come back to our install Nextcloud page. We are going to copy the link for that tar.bz2 file, and we are going to wget that file into this directory. So if we do an ls, we can see Nextcloud 17.0.1.tar.bz2. We'll type in tar, X for extract, V for verbose, F for file, and then we provide our file name, which is Nextcloud. After we get done running that, we are going to have a Nextcloud folder inside of our Nextcloud folder, which is not what we want. So I'm going to remove the Nextcloud tar file since we've extracted it. We don't need that anymore. We are going to move everything within Nextcloud here. So if we do an ls, now you can see we've got some Nextcloud files. I think we did leave a few files behind inside of the Nextcloud directory, our .files, so we will also move those separately. All right, that was not the best syntax to use with the move command, but if we do an ls-a, we will see that we do have our .htaccess and .user.ini files here in our Nextcloud folder now. So this should be everything we need. We can go ahead and come back to our example.nerdonthestreet.com web browser. We can refresh our page, and we are getting an internal server error. And that is probably because we did not set our file permissions. If we do an ls-al here in our terminal, you can see all the Nextcloud files are owned by nobody. Given that the permissions are set so that only the owner can write to these files, we need to make our web server the owner of these files so that it can write to them. So we will do a chown-r for recursive, www.data, which is our web server's user. And we will run that on the current directory. And that -r needs to be capital. There we go. So if we do an ls-al now, you can see not only are all of these files owned by www.data, but the root directory, var www nextcloud, is also owned by our web server, which is what we want. So now let's come back to our web browser, refresh this one more time. Hey, there we go. So I'm going to type in my username, admin, my password, super secure password. Now for our storage and database, I like to put my data folder outside of the var www folder. Security-wise, as long as everything's configured properly, you should be fine even if you've got it set up like this. But I just like to separate the data out from the application. So I'm going to make a directory at the root of my system called root inc data. I'm going to chown www data on that inc data directory. And I'm going to change our data folder to /nc data. So while the Nextcloud application is stored in our web server directory here, the data will be stored in a separate folder. Next up, we need to create our database. Now, before we create our database for Nextcloud, I want to run one more command just to secure our MariaDB server in general. That command is mysql_secure_installation. The default root password for our entire MariaDB server is blank, which is not very secure. So we're going to go ahead and set a root password. Since this is an example video, this is also not going to be super secure, but ideally your root password will be very secure. We are going to remove anonymous users. We're going to disallow remote login from root. We will remove the test database, reload the privilege tables to apply all of that. All right, now we can enter into MariaDB. We can create our database called Nextcloud. We are also going to create a user called Nextcloud on our local MariaDB server at localhost, identified by the super secure password. We'll run that. And we are going to grant all privileges on the Nextcloud database dot all tables within that database to our Nextcloud user, which is on our local MariaDB server. We'll run that. And I don't think I was supposed to put the database name in quotes. Nope, that wasn't the problem. The problem was that I misspelled privileges. You know, I'm just going to copy and paste this word. All right, so it looks like the problem was I left out an E in between the L and the G. Okay, all right, MySQL. Also did not work. Okay, so there we have our winning command. We have granted the permissions necessary for our Nextcloud user to use the Nextcloud database. We'll come back to our web browser. We'll type in the database username, which was Nextcloud, database password, the database name, which was also Nextcloud, and we're using our local MariaDB server. I'll click Finish Setup, and we'll see if this works. This waiting is making me kind of nervous, but if we come back to our terminal and we, let's quit out of MariaDB. If we run top here, looks like Apache 2 is using up 100% of our CPU almost. So our web server was just processing. If we come back over to Nextcloud, we just caught it finishing. And now we have Nextcloud installed. That's all you got to do to install Nextcloud. We can run through the little first time login wizard here. We can start using Nextcloud. Now we are going to go ahead and take care of all of our errors and warnings that show up in our settings here and our overview of the administration section. We do have some warnings regarding our setup, so let's resolve these warnings. First things first, the PHP memory limit is below the recommended value of 512 megabytes. This should be fairly easy for us to fix. We are going to nano into our etc php 7.3 apache 2 php.ini file. So this is our configuration file for PHP. I'm just going to do a Control W for memory to start with. And here you can see our memory limit. We're going to increase it to 512 megabytes. We'll save this file. We'll go ahead and restart Apache. And if we refresh our page here, that error should be gone. Yep, that took care of it. Next up, Nextcloud sees that we're using HTTPS, but we have not set our HSTS header. That header is going to tell web browsers not to make any connection to this page that is not encrypted with TLS. This helps prevent man-in-the-middle attacks. So we are going to nano into our etc apache 2 sites available nextcloud.conf file. And actually, that's not the one we want. We want our nextcloud ssl.conf file. We're going to add a new section in here, and this section is going to say if we have a module loaded called mod headers.c. We'll go ahead and close that XML so we don't forget to later. So if the headers mod is loaded, we are going to add a header. We're always going to add the header on every page load for this entire virtual host. That header is going to be strict transport security. So it's HTTPS strict transport security, which stands for HSTS. And this header is going to say max age equals, and let's use the recommended value here from the warning. We'll copy that and paste it over here. We are also going to say include subdomains, even though this is already a subdomain. And we're also going to add the preload option. This preload option means that this website, example.nerdonthestreet.com, will actually be added to a hard-coded list that is shipped with all the major web browsers, so that before a user ever connects to your website, their browser will already know that it's supposed to be using HTTPS. So we'll save this file. We will a2 nmod headers just to make sure that module is enabled, and then we will restart Apache. All right, now if we refresh, sure enough, that warning is gone. Next up, we want to resolve these warnings about the dot files for caldav and carddav not currently working. Oh, Nextcloud wants to show notifications. We'll go ahead and let it. Now, these .well known items are not actual files. If we do an ls-al grep .well known, you can see there's nothing there. But when a caldav or carddav application, when a calendar application tries to make a request to .well known, we want to forward that, redirect it, so that it can access our calendar data, and the same thing with our contacts. Now, if we take a look in our .htaccess file, we already have, if we search for mod rewrite, we already have configuration here that's going to allow this to happen. In order to make sure this configuration is actually taking effect, we're going to do two things. First of all, this is mod rewrite that we're using, so I'm going to a2 nmod rewrite just to make sure that is enabled. It was already enabled. And the second thing we're going to do is we're going to nano back into our etc apache 2 sites available nextcloud lessl.conf file. We were just here, but we're going to add one more line. Underneath our document root section, we're going to add a directory section for the same var www nextcloud directory. We will close our XML tag here, and we are going to put in the line allow override all. This is going to tell our web server that if it finds files, configuration files within our var www nextcloud directory, it should allow that configuration file to override our server's default configuration. So after adding that, we will systemctl restart Apache 2 again. All right, we'll refresh our page here. And we've gotten rid of those two warnings. We are down to one last warning. This one's about the memory cache. To get a little bit better performance, we are going to install APCU, which is a memory caching program that is going to be apt install php-apcu. So we'll run that. As you can see, it was not pulled in earlier because this is not strictly required, once again, just for better performance. We're going to nano into our config.php file. If we do a search for memcache right now, we see there is no option called memcache in the file, so we will add one. This option will be memcache.local, and we're going to point it to /oc/memcache/apcu. That's going to tell Nextcloud to use the APCU memcache. We will systemctl restart Apache 2 again. And now if we refresh the page, we get a beautiful green check mark that indicates we have done everything properly. So that's all you need to do to install Nextcloud and get all the warnings out of the way. Now I do just want to take a minute for my own viewers and for myself to take a look around Nextcloud since it has been a little while. I have never used Nextcloud 17 in particular. So let's go to our apps section. Looks like we've already got an app update available. Let me go ahead and update that. And if we scroll through here, the text app is enabled by default, so I'm going to want to take a look at that in a minute. We were getting a notification with some recommendations. Nextcloud Talk. Okay, so that's a Spreed app. Let's download and enable that. And I'm also interested to see this Nextcloud Mail app that they're recommending a long time ago. Well, back around 2015, I was running a Nextcloud server and I was using self-hosted email and I was using Nextcloud to access it through a web browser. But there was no official Nextcloud Mail app at the time, or if there was, it was very early alpha. So I'm interested to see what that one's looking like as well. I was using Roundcube at the time, I think. All right, so let's go to our files and let's create a new text document. Test document. You can see the default file extension is .md for .markdown because this new text editor that it looks like it's loading up right away is powered by Markdown. So this is the text editor, okay. I will say it loaded much quicker than Collabora. If I can highlight, paste a couple times, yep, clipboard seems to be working fine. Okay, I'm not getting a selection cursor when I'm hovering over text. Like what my cursor looks like down here, I would expect it to look like that over the text, but it does not. That might be web browser specific though. We can bold text, we can italicize text. We've got unsaved changes, so our last edited timestamp is a bit wonky there, it looks like. We can do block quotes in here. This is a quote. I've gotten used to using Markdown more than I used to be. Boy, how do I get out of the quote? Well, that doesn't seem to work very well. Oh, I have to press enter twice. Yeah, I've gotten used to using Markdown from standard notes. I use the Markdown editor in that. But this seems to be a very nice editor. You can see it doesn't actually show you all of the symbols and things like normally for bold. I think it's 1 asterisk, bold text. Oh, that was italicized text actually, and you can see it automatically italicized it. Do underscores not do that? No, underscores do that as well. I think it's 2 asterisks for bold, right? Yeah. So if you're familiar with writing Markdown, this will parse your Markdown and make it look actually decent, which is cool. And then let's try opening up a second window here. Looks like I should just be able to copy that address, paste it into another window. Oh no, I can't. Let's click on textdocument.md to open it up. And let's see how quick this collaboration stuff is. If I start typing here. Okay, so that's not exactly showing up. Okay, maybe it doesn't update when I'm not highlighted in the window. Yeah. All right, so that's not instant. I think Collabora is actually a little quicker than that, but this is very functional. I'm not sure I would recommend it for collaborative writing, but collaborative writing is not really something you need to do all the time anyway. If you are just wanting to personally take notes or write documents in your web browser, it seems like this is working quite well. Certainly much better than the unformatted text editor that was in the previous Nextcloud 16 and 15. And this certainly looks nicer as well than the super old built-in document editor that Nextcloud used to have. So I was interested to see what that looked like. Let's take a look at our Spreed app, the collaboration app. Now I don't actually have a webcam in here, but I'm just gonna say, let's start a video call. Click on that. So we've got a, looks like text chat here. Interesting. So this is actually an entire messaging server. You know, here at Nerd on the Street, we use Rocket Chat for our collaboration. We chat in different chat rooms there, but you can create chat rooms here in Nextcloud with a default installation. I had to install the Talk app, but that was one click. So that's very interesting. We can see our participants over here. We can connect documents to our project, and then we can start a call if we'd like. Like I said, I'm not using a webcam right now, but I can unmute myself here and you can see the audio going up and down there as I'm talking. Yeah, and I have no camera. I can share my screen. Or I can attempt to. Well, that doesn't seem to be working, but that is also possibly browser specific. So very cool talk app. I'm not one to use Nextcloud for a bunch of stuff other than documents. You know, like I said, I'm using Rocket Chat right now, and I would be hesitant to move away from a dedicated chat platform to an all-around cloud platform like this. But if you're just wanting one application or one server to rule them all, this certainly makes Nextcloud a great choice. And then finally, we can go to Mail. And I'm not actually sure if I want to sign into my email. Let's go ahead and do it. So my name is Jacob Kaufman, and let's see if it can figure out the fast mail IMAP settings by itself. So Jacob at Nerd on the Street. Actually, it's not going to be able to figure that out, so I'm going to go over to manual. Jacob at nerdonthestreet.com. I'm just going to fill in my IMAP and SMTP settings here. All right, and let's see what our mail application looks like. Wow, okay, this was very quick. See, Nextcloud has been in development for a very long time, and a lot of these more complicated applications used to be very slow to load. Now, I am using a Chromium-based web browser right now. I'm using Vivaldi at the moment, so I'm not sure how the speed would look in Firefox. It would probably be comparable, and I'm not actually going to scroll through my mail here. I think everything on the screen is safe to show you right now. You're getting a little bit of a spoiler for a future video in this particular email. But yeah, this looks like a very simple, no-frills email app, which is what I was looking for years ago. If this had been available at the time, I probably would have used this instead of Roundcube. All right, so that's it. There you have it. That is Nextcloud. Now, I am still interested to take a look at OnlyOffice. I made a video a year or so ago about Collabora Online with Nextcloud. I have not taken a look at OnlyOffice, though, and even though this new text editor is very nice, sometimes you might still need a full Microsoft Office compatible or LibreOffice compatible online document suite for not only Word documents, but also spreadsheets and presentations. And so my next video is going to be taking a look at installing OnlyOffice on the same server and setting it up to work with Nextcloud. Make sure you guys subscribe below if you want to see that. That is if you're watching on YouTube. My videos are also available at nerdonthestreet.com, and you can go to nerdclub.knots.co to support me if you find these videos helpful. For now, though, that's everything I had to show you at this moment. So I'm Jacob Kaufman, I'm the Nerd on the Street, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.